Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us once again. As you've seen, Phil is here with us. So Philip Bender will be leading our meditation session today. We have a wonderful focused artwork to share with you, which is a Chinese painting from the 17th century, which I think you're going to enjoy. And we also have Wei Tian Yan, who's a research fellow at the Freer and Sackler Galleries. He's going to be our spotlight speaker today after the meditation session, sharing a little bit more about today's artwork and answering your questions. So thank you again for all of you who are joining from wherever you may be. And I'll invite Phil to kick us off and begin the session.
Thank you so much, Grace. I hope I didn't talk over you. I just realized I had my computer sound muted. Well, welcome again, everyone. These things happen in our Zoom lives. I'm really pleased to join you. It's a highlight of my month when I get to come and meditate with you all and on a work of art. Here we'll be endeavoring to sit a little bit, explore the work in new and perhaps interesting ways. And today I'll invite you to try a couple of different techniques to work with the breath, some body awareness, maybe even engage imagination to heighten our receptivity and maybe feel our way into a visceral responsiveness to this work. Before we begin, I want to introduce you to a technique called Sheetali Breath. Perhaps many of you are familiar with this. Sheetali Breath is done with an exhalation by pursing the lips. So you take a nice natural inhalation, preferably through the nostrils. And then you shape the lips as if to whistle, and you create a gentle stream. And do that. Why don't you do that with me here? Inhale through the nose. Exhale, blowing through pursed lips. Let's do that one more time. Good. When we get to that technique, I'll invite you to bring attention to the steady stream of breath. It's a very gentle, almost effortless breath. And eventually to the surface of your body, the skin. And imagine the skin softening, losing tension, you might say, just as a balloon loses surface tension as it deflates. Now, let's get comfortable and prepare for our practice. If you're seated, find a position for you that allows you to soften the shoulders and soften the hips. Begin to settle. If you're lying down, let all your weight rest back. If you're seated, let all your weight settle through your sits bones, through your bottom. If it's comfortable for you, close your eyes. Little by little, we'll move out of our thinking and doing aspects and more into our feeling and being. And let's see if we can get a hint of that just by inhaling through the nose, exhaling with a sigh. Do that again. Nice inhalation. Feel the sigh. Two more. Letting go now of the breath. Let yourself descend, descending little by little into stillness. Now let's bring forward the Sheetali breath. So taking a medium to full inhalation through the nose. Exhale through pursed lips, a steady stream of breath. And repeat. Inhaling comfortably. Exhaling, letting go. Keep that going at your own steady pace. With each exhalation, can you imagine softening your exterior? Tension melting off the body. Mind slipping underneath thought. Now let go of the manipulation of breath and continue to slip. Slip into the quiet presence of sensation. Now let's spend a little bit more time with the body, journeying from point to point to heighten our sensitivity and enliven our responsiveness. When I name a part of the body, simply rest your attention there, as if to feel a light touch or see a point of light. Begin at the space between your eyebrows. Move your attention to the base of your throat. Attention moves to the right shoulder, the right elbow, right wrist, Gentle touch of attention at the tip of the right thumb. Index finger. Middle finger. Ring finger. Little finger. Right wrist. Right elbow. Right shoulder. Base of the throat. Left shoulder. Left elbow. Left wrist. Let your attention touch the tip of your left thumb. Index finger. Middle finger. Ring finger. Little finger. Left wrist. Left elbow. Left shoulder. Base of the throat. The body becoming more and more sensitive, responsive. Attention to the center of the chest. Right chest. Center chest. Left chest. Center chest. Navel. Right hip. Right knee. Right ankle. Tip of the right big toe. Second toe. Third toe. Fourth toe. Fifth toe. Right ankle. Right knee. Right hip. Low belly center. Left hip. left knee, left ankle, tip of the left big toe, second toe, third toe, fourth toe, fifth toe. Left ankle, left knee, left hip, low abdomen, navel, center of the chest, base of the throat, the space between the eyebrows. Sense the open, unconditional receptivity of the body. The vibratory quality of your flesh. Now, with some help from our tech crew, we'll show the work of art. But as you are able, maintain this open, unconditional receptivity to the work. Now, just take a moment in this receptive state to gaze at the work. Take it in. This wintry scene, winter travelers crossing a bridge. They are traveling from the left of this scene across a bridge to the right, uphill, to where perhaps you can see their destination, the gated town near the top right of this drawing. Now let's immerse ourselves a bit further in this work. For whoever's in control of the artwork, could you focus in on the trees to the left of the traveler? Perfect. Now for our viewers, just take a moment. Gaze at this tree. Notice its dark, dark branches. Can you imagine those branches, those icy leaves like your fingers? Cold, maybe even frigid. Move a little bit to the right so that we can see the bridge in its icicle-like posts below the central traveler. What does that elicit in you? The spindly legs of the donkey, the worn posts, barely stabilizing the bridge. Icicle-like indeed. Perhaps we could feel a sensation in our legs, in our toes. And let's travel a little farther up the path. We see the lead traveler with two more donkeys. He has a steady climb ahead of him, snowy, certainly cold, maybe even windblown. But soon they'll make their destination. Scrolling up, we see the gated town. And what could we imagine there? Could we see ourselves as these cold travelers with cold fingers, cold legs, cold toes, passing through the gate, taking the donkeys to their stable, and then ourselves into a tavern where we might sit in front of a fire and warm ourselves from the inside out with a bowl of soup and feel the fire warm our flesh, our face, our hands, and our feet. May we find time to rest into sensation, to give it time to make its way to our conscious awareness, to appreciate it. Now, if we could return one last time to the central traveler on the bridge, and just gaze at this traveler. Right smack in the middle of the work, on a bridge, leaving behind the long, cold journey as he just about finishes his journey on the last little stretch before arriving to his warm destination. May our senses enliven our world and enliven everything we come in contact with. Here ends our meditation. Peace, peace, peace.
Thank you very much for that, Phil, for encouraging us to use our senses to experience the artwork in a new way. And I'd like to invite Wei Tian now to join us to tell us a little more about what we were looking at.
Thanks, Grace, for the introduction and have me here today. I'm very delighted to be here. Philip has already shown us through this image quite carefully. So what I plan to do is to offer some art historical perspectives on this painting. I'd like to mainly focus on three things. First, the style of this painting. What kind of techniques did the artist use to create this image? And second, what is this artist trying to convey? Third, and finally, how are we supposed to enter this image as a viewer? So I'd like to first bring your attention to the size and format of this work. This image here measures about 11 by 17 inches, which is a little smaller than two standard letter-size papers. If you can see my hand, it's about this big. This kind of small format is known as album leaves, which are supposed to be looked at a close distance, almost like reading a book. In fact, if you take a close look at the center of this image, you will see a vertical straight line, which tells you that this painting had been folded and opened before, just like a book. The painting features a very centralized, almost symmetrical composition, with two large mountains, one on the left and the other on the right. These two mountains functions as a framing device, which directs the viewer's attention to the center of this image, which Philip just pointed out is donkey rider, followed by his servant. From the heavy robe that this man is wearing and that covers his entire body, we know this is probably the winter season. The snow dresses up the mountain surface, as well as the bridge that these people stand on. We can almost hear their footsteps, slowly and quietly walking on the snow, and perhaps also sense the wind flowing through the valley. It is important to note that the effect of snow is not achieved through white pigment, but through the dynamic contrast between the pale ink wash in the background and the unpainted mountain surface. If we zoom in toward the upper section of the mountain, over here, we will realize that the artist employs a very wet brush to fill the painting background, whereas most of the rock surface are left blank. Some dark and dry brushwork, as you can see over here, not only create a nice texture for the mountain, but also further accentuates the feeling of snow through their contrast against the unpainted mountain surface. In other words, through the very lively interaction between ink wash, texture brushwork, and empty surface, the painter was able to create this gorgeous winter scenery of the snow. The painting is formally attributed to Guo Xi, whose name is inscribed over here on the right-hand side sleeve above the painting. Guo Xi was an 11th century master of Chinese landscape painting, who not only painted, but also developed a lot of theories on the functions, technique, and the significance of landscape images in China. I do like to make it clear that I'm not saying this work was done by Guo Xi's hand. Instead, it is more likely to be a 17th century rendition of Guo Xi's ideas. In other words, this work was not done by Guo Xi, but by a later painter who was trying to emulate Guo Xi. This is a quite common theme in Chinese art, where later artists attempted to interpret or evoke earlier masters. So what kind of ideas did this painter try to convey? Guo Xi had expressed numerous times in his writings, and I quote here, that good landscape paintings should be those through which you may travel, those in which you may sightsee, those through which you may wander, and those in which you may live. It is possible to realize these ideas by following the people depicted this landscape. You can travel with the donkey rider and his servant crossing the bridge. Additional luggage-carrying donkeys lead your eyes move forward on the mountain trail. After taking some time to climb up this S-shaped route, which is kind of semi-hidden behind the mountains, you will end up in front of a gate tower through which you can enter and relax. It is very smart that the painter did not depict what is behind the gate, and viewers can use their imagination to mentally make up a place where they'd like to be. So the key idea is about traveling in this painted landscape with your mind, which also seems very fitting to this day and age, given the fact that all of us cannot travel very freely. I hope you all enjoy traveling in this image with me, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about this work.
Thanks so much for that talk. That was wonderful. We did have one question come in so far, which is, could the figure be a pilgrim on a pilgrimage?
Yes, it could be. There are cases where pilgrims are actually depicting a landscape. But for the painting over here, since the depiction of figure is so generic, so we don't know who they are, but you can always imagine them to be someone who you like them to be. So it's a part of your mental exercise to imagine yourself as the traveler.
Amy asks, I'm curious if there is any significance to the branches with the red on the trees on either side of the bridge.
Yes, I think it's a very deliberate artistic choice that was made by the painter, which is kind of interesting as well. If you take a look at the robe that this man is wearing, is red, which also corresponds to the tree's color. So it's also this kind of a framing device trying to guide the viewer's view through the trees to the people in the mountain, and then further move away to the mountain trails. Yes, so it's symbolic in this way.
Anna asks, how is it determined that this is a copy of an earlier artist's style? How do you know that?
We know this has been identified as Guoxi's work because there's an inscription over here which says Guoxi's name. But apparently, based on the format of this work and the style of this work, it cannot be Guoxi. So it's probably some later artist who was trying to emulate Guoxi. So this is how we know, because the format of the painter was much later than Guoxi's time.
Okay. And Lisa asked, what would have been the original purpose of this painting and who might have owned it?
This is actually a quite interesting question. So as for the collectors of this kind of images, all kinds of people could have owned it. Scholars in China could have purchased this work for their leisure time to look at, or art lovers in general would love to have this work at their house as well. So yeah, so it's a wide spectrum of people who could have owned these images in earlier times.
And can you tell us anything about the surface it's painted on, or the type of material?
I think this painting is ink and color on paper, which kind of explains why the artist could have employed a very wet brush to create this kind of atmosphere that almost looked like a mist. So because the paper can observe the water and the ink very well, and also help the artist to achieve this kind of watery effect over here. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you. Tracy was noticing an animal-like creature below the crossing. Maybe she means the bridge. I'm not sure. I don't know if there are any animals here.
Well, the donkeys are the animals. There are quite a few of them. There's one over here, and there are one behind the trees, and there's one donkey who is just crossing the trees, and there are two more over here. So there are 5 in total in this landscape.
Judy asks, do we know the actual artist's name and title of the painting?
We do not know because the artist did not sign his name or her name on this landscape. So what we have is the attribution, which is a kind of a speculation based on the style.
And also another question from Daniel, is there anything about the actual architecture of that gate that tells us that it's a gate for a city, or tells us about its use?
Yes, that's a very good question. The city gate, this kind of structure, which has a kind of a tower-like structure above the gate, this is very common in Chinese paintings, which tells you that it often leads to a city. So after trespassing the gate, you usually end up in a city scene. And in contrast to what we see just in the landscape, which is kind of like the suburban areas, we're returning from the nature to the city. So there's a kind of a recurring theme over here.
Thank you. Someone else is asking, how would this have been displayed as a wall hanging? And I understand you said it's an album leaf, is that right? So would you looked at it flat on a table?
So the album leaves, when they are stored in a collector's home, they're usually folded just like a book. And then when you want to show them, it's usually actually a series of paintings. This is one of the leaves. I think there are 6 or 7 more. I think I could be wrong though. There are more paintings in the set of the album leaves, which means that you're opening up one page after another, and maybe they will come up with a coherent narrative or not. It's often the case, yes.
We had one other question about where in China, what kind of place or landscape might this be depicting? And someone was asking if it was a location in Yunnan.
That's a very good question as well. When looking at the landscape painting, we're always trying to determine if it refers to a specific site or is more of like a generic depiction of a place. So for the painting over here, I do not know if it is actually refers to any specific landscape in China. Just in my view, it could be more of a general depiction of a scene that we often observe in the nature. Nothing too specific.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. I also just wanted to read a comment that Allison put in the chat. She says, this is reminding her that we're all trying to get safely over our current bridge right now. So this painting has a lot of symbolic significance for us. And Joan also put a beautiful quote by James Baldwin into the chat about being sensual and how that helps us respect and rejoice in the force of life. So I really appreciated that quote that you added. And I think that really speaks to Phil's approach to meditative practice that he shared with us today. Another question, does the Sackler have other albums related to this work?
Yes, there are more album leaves that depicts the landscape. I don't have the accession number right now, but I can always look it up and share it in the chat later. Yes, there are always more.
Yeah, we have collection. The museum has a very large collection of Chinese paintings. Anything else that you'd like to say, Wei Tian?
I think the key part of this landscape image is about the brushwork and the atmosphere that the painter creates, which also gives us a very strong sense of the sensorial experience, which is also very important. It requires a viewer to exercise their imagination, to enter the image and travel with the people inside. So this is also very strong side of the mental exercise.
Yeah, I really see that when we kind of zoom out and look at the painting as a whole. The feeling of the brushwork is so key in the experience we're getting and looking at it. Okay, last question. A couple of people are asking about the seals and the red stamps. I think you talked about that a little bit, but maybe you want to repeat for someone who might not have heard or add anything.
Yes. So we have 3 seals on this image. One located over here, and the other one located over here. And there's also a half seal over here. So in most common cases, those seals are referred to the collector's seals, which means that the person who owned this image imprinted the seal impression on the image to showcase their ownership. So what we see happening in the case over here as well. So these are indications that this painting has been passed through different people in different time. It's a sign of the collector's traces.
Thank you so much. And
thank you for having me.
Really appreciate your time and being here and sharing with us today. And we've just put a link in the chat where you can explore more Chinese albums on our website if you'd like to look at more. And I appreciate the message from Miri about that we're all crossing precarious bridges right now. Thank you for everyone who joined us. I've enjoyed looking at this painting really closely today on this cold, wintry day. And I invite you to come back and join us for our meditation sessions next week on Monday and Wednesday, and then another art focus session next Friday. Until then, stay safe and have a wonderful weekend, everyone.